The thing about secrets is, they always feel small when you first get them. Like a tiny stone you just picked up. You think, no big deal, I can hold on to this forever. But they start to get heavy, right? They scratch at your conscience. And sometimes, they get so big they stop being yours, and they start controlling you. That's where I was about a week ago, sitting in my tiny, overheated dorm room, just staring at my phone. It was almost midnight. My roommate, Liam, was already asleep, snoring into his pillow like a congested walrus. Which, honestly, was a good thing, because the text message I was looking at, it was the kind of thing that could shatter a friendship, ruin a family, and possibly get me kicked out of school. It didn't come from Liam. It came from Sarah, Liam's older sister. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Sarah. She's the kind of person who walks into a room and the temperature changes. Not because she's loud or flashy, she's actually really quiet, but because she carries this intensity. She's stunning, sure, in that effortlessly cool, grad student way, but there's always this look in her eyes, like she knows something you don't. She and Liam are super close. They're practically the only family they have since everything happened. I'd only met her a handful of times, usually when she'd swing by to drop off groceries or help Liam with a tough paper. We'd exchange polite hellos, maybe a small, awkward laugh. Totally innocent. Definitely nothing that warranted a message at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I remember thinking, this is a mistake. She meant to text Liam. But the message was just for me. It was short, maybe 3 lines, and it just hung there on my screen, glowing in the dark, sucking the air out of the room. I reread it 3 times, just to be sure my sleep-deprived brain wasn't inventing things. Sarah, are you awake? Don't wake Liam. I need to talk to you. Urgent. ****. I typed back a simple, yes, I'm awake. Everything okay? The reply came back instantly, faster than she should have been able to type. It felt urgent, vibrating against my hand like a small alarm. Sarah, I'm just upstairs. The 3rd floor, room 307. Just come up. But seriously, don't knock. Just open the door and walk in. ****, and that's the part that stopped my heart. Just open the door and walk in. Room 307. That's not a dorm room. That's one of the staff apartments. Why would she be there? And why the cloak and dagger instruction? Whatever she needed, it couldn't be good. It felt like I was being pulled into something massive, something way over my head. I looked over at Liam, totally oblivious, his mouth slightly open, dreaming sweet student dreams. Going up there meant risking everything. Staying here meant missing something crucial, something maybe only I could do. The question wasn't if I should go, but what exactly I was walking into when I stepped into that silent hallway. And why was she so terrified of anyone hearing a knock? I needed to move, and fast. You have to understand the dynamic here. Liam and I, we're tight. We're the classic unlikely pair. Me, the guy who worries about his grade point average, and Liam, the one who just barely scrapes by on charisma and pure luck. We ended up as random roommates freshman year, but we clicked instantly. We pull all-nighters together, we share way too much about our terrible dating lives, and we mostly keep each other sane. But here's the thing. Despite all the shared pizza and late-night talks, our friendship always felt like it existed on the surface of something much deeper in Liam's life. That deeper thing was Sarah and what happened to their family 2 years ago. I knew the story in pieces, a car accident, sudden, awful, the kind of tragedy that stops your life cold. Liam was 17. Sarah, being the older one, stepped up instantly. She became his guardian, his lifeline, and basically put her own life and career plans on hold to make sure he finished high school and got to college. She sacrificed a lot. Every time she visited, I saw it. This fierce, protective loyalty she had around him. If I mess things up with Sarah, I don't just lose my roommate. I shatter the one truly stable and safe thing Liam has left. That sense of heavy responsibility, the obligation I felt to protect their shared history, was what ultimately pushed me out of the chair. It wasn't curiosity that motivated me. It was the raw, paralyzing fear of letting Liam down, even if he didn't know I was helping. I pulled on a heavy hoodie, slipped my phone into my pocket, and slowly, agonizingly, cracked open our door. The main floor hallway was silent, smelling faintly of stale microwave popcorn and industrial cleaner. I moved like a ghost, easing the door shut, checking on Liam one last time, still snoring, thankfully. Room 307 was 2 floors up, at the end of the long hall on the third floor, the faculty section. It was the absolute last place a student, or a student's sibling, should be after midnight. This part of the building was reserved for visiting professors or staff. The door to 307 looked different from the cheap, hollow wood of the dorm rooms. It was solid, dark, and had a heavy, metallic gleam. I finally reached it, my heart hammering against my ribs, loud enough, I was sure, for anyone inside to hear. I stopped, staring at the polished brass numbers, 307. This wasn't Sarah needing advice on a paper. This was something that felt serious, maybe even illegal. I imagined the scenarios. Was she hiding something? Was she hiding from someone? My hand hovered over the cold metal of the door handle. It was locked, of course, but then I saw it. A tiny, almost imperceptible sliver of light coming from just under the door jamb. It wasn't totally dark inside, and that's when the reality of the situation hit me hardest. If she had been waiting for me, why hadn't she unlocked it already? And if it was locked, what was I supposed to do now that I was here, and the only instruction I was given was, don't knock? The lock was one of those old-school deadbolts, not a keycard reader, which was even stranger for a faculty apartment. My fingers, slick with sweat, fumbled in my hoodie pocket. I felt the sharp edges of my own room key. Useless here. I tried the handle just in case. Solid. Locked. The silence of the hallway pressed in on me, making every breath sound like a gasp. I wanted to text Sarah, it's locked, but the last instruction was so firm. Don't wake Liam. Don't knock. That suggested absolute stealth was the priority. If I sent a text, the vibration or the screen light might be visible to whoever she was trying to avoid, if they were nearby. I crouched down, trying to look through the tiny gap at the bottom of the door where the light was escaping. I couldn't make out anything, just a faint, hazy orange glow. My brain started racing, constructing the worst possible scenarios. Was she hurt? Was she waiting to spring a trap? What if Liam was somehow involved in this, and this was an elaborate, terrifying test? Then, the door clicked. Not the loud, mechanical clack of a key turning, but a small, sharp, almost electrical snick. The deadbolt hadn't physically moved, but the latch holding it seemed to have retracted a fraction of an inch. It was unlocked, and it happened without any sound from the inside that suggested someone had walked up to the door. My mind screamed, this is the moment. This is the point of no return. I gripped the cold brass handle, my hand trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I took one deep breath, trying to steady myself, and pushed the heavy door inward, slowly, carefully. It didn't creak, thankfully, but opened onto a pitch-black foyer. The orange light I had seen wasn't coming from this small entry space. The air inside was thick, not with industrial cleaner, but something sweet and slightly metallic. I froze in the entryway, my eyes strained to see. Sarah? I whispered, my voice sounding impossibly loud in the darkness. There was no reply, just the humming of the building's old pipes and the frantic drumming of my own heart. I took a single step inside, and the door silently swung shut behind me, sealing me into the dark. And then, I heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound coming from around the corner, deeper in the apartment. It was a soft, scraping noise, like something being dragged across a rough carpet, over and over again. And it wasn't stopping. That scraping sound, whatever it was, pulled me forward. The darkness was absolute in the small entryway, but I could see a faint outline of a doorway maybe 10 feet ahead, leading into the main living space. That's where the orange light and the terrible noise were coming from. The metallic smell was much stronger now. It wasn't the smell of blood, not exactly, but something close, like pennies mixed with sweet, burning sugar. I moved with my back against the wall, one hand outstretched to guide myself. Every nerve ending was screaming at me to run back, to pound on Liam's door, to pretend this entire midnight mission never happened. But the scraping noise was so deliberate, so unnatural, it rooted my feet to the floor. It was too quiet to be someone moving furniture. It was too regular to be an accident. As I reached the doorway, the sound abruptly stopped. Total silence. I flattened myself against the jamb, peering around the corner. The room was a faculty study, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large wooden desk. And sitting behind that desk, illuminated by a single, old-fashioned desk lamp that cast that strange orange glow, was Sarah. She was just sitting there, perfectly still. She wasn't tied up or hurt, at least not physically in the way I had imagined. She was wearing a thick sweater, despite the heat, and her face was pale, tight with an emotion I couldn't place. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something colder, more focused. In front of her, the desk wasn't covered in papers. It was covered in small, metallic tools, tweezers, tiny screwdrivers, and a dark, opened leather pouch. And that's when I saw what she had been scraping. She had her hand on an old, leather-bound journal. Not a flimsy school notebook, but something weighty and aged. She was carefully, meticulously running a small, razor-thin piece of metal along the inside cover. It looked like she was trying to peel something away from the binding. She was so engrossed, she hadn't noticed me yet. "Sarah?" I whispered again, louder this time. She jolted violently, dropping the tool. It clattered against the desk, echoing horribly in the small room. She spun around, her eyes wide and black in the dim light. She didn't look relieved. She looked absolutely terrified that I had seen her. "You idiot," she hissed, her voice low and furious. "I told you to be quiet." She quickly shoved the journal and the tools off the desk and into the drawer. She stood up, blocking my view, her entire posture radiating distress. "Get out of here. Go back to your room. It was a mistake. Forget you ever got that text." She took a step toward me, and I noticed something else. The cuff of her thick sweater on her right hand was slightly pulled down, almost covering her knuckles. And then I saw the dark, rust-colored smudge on the white wool. I stood my ground. "No. You texted me. You told me to walk in without knocking. What is going on? What were you doing to that book? And what is that?" I pointed toward her hand, my heart hammering. She glanced down at the smudge, her face losing what little color it had left. Before she could answer, before she could even deny it, a loud, heavy thump came from the next room over, the bedroom. The door to that room was closed, but the sound was unmistakable. Someone, or something, was in there, and they had just made their presence known. Sarah's eyes locked with mine, no longer angry, but pure desperation. Her lips moved, forming a single, silent word, right as the door to the bedroom slowly, agonizingly, began to turn on its handle. That bedroom door handle was turning, and Sarah didn't move. She couldn't. She was paralyzed, staring past me. I finally understood the terror in her eyes. It wasn't about getting caught by campus security. It was about the person behind that door. Her silent word finally registered in my mind. It was Liam, my roommate, asleep and snoring 2 floors below us, I thought. But Sarah's frantic gaze was telling a completely different story. The thump had been him. He was in the bedroom of this restricted faculty apartment. And if he was here, he wasn't just asleep. He was either hiding, or worse. I started to turn, ready to fling the door open and demand an explanation from Liam. But Sarah lunged forward, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. Her grip was cold and desperate. "He's not himself," she whispered, her breath hot on my ear, her voice cracking. "He's been missing since Sunday. They think he ran away. But he didn't run. He's here. And he brought the book, the one Dad kept secret." The twist wasn't that Liam was involved. The twist was that Liam was missing, hiding in a faculty apartment with their father's forbidden secret, and the person coming out of that room wasn't the Liam I knew. The bedroom door clicked, and slowly, the gap widened. The figure stepping out was undeniably Liam. But not himself was an understatement. The familiar, easygoing slump was gone, replaced by a rigid tenseness. His eyes, usually friendly and slightly goofy, were glassy, looking right through me as if I were a piece of furniture. He was wearing the same clothes he'd had on 3 days ago when Sarah first reported him missing. Sarah tightened her grip on my arm. "The journal," she mouthed, gesturing frantically toward the desk drawer she had just slammed shut. "He thinks I'm trying to destroy it. Distract him. Get the book and run." Liam's gaze finally settled on me, but the recognition was vacant. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, and I saw his right hand was concealed behind his back. The air crackled with danger. This wasn't the guy who shared my tiny fridge. This was a stranger driven by something dark. "Who are you?" Liam asked, his voice flat, emotionless. I forced a breath. "Liam, it's me, Don't," Sarah hissed, pushing me slightly. "Just run." I knew I couldn't just leave her. If I tried to bolt, Liam would be on me instantly. The only chance was the distraction. I pointed past Liam toward the dark bedroom. "Did you hear that? I think someone is still in the hall." The lie worked. Liam paused, his glassy eyes flicking toward the apartment door. In that split second, I lunged toward the desk. I ripped open the drawer, finding the heavy leather journal beneath the pile of tools. It was warm to the touch. As I grabbed it, Liam fully understood the deception. He let out a low, guttural sound and charged. Sarah threw herself in front of him, shouting his name, trying to physically hold him back. But Liam shoved her aside with terrifying force. She crashed into the bookcase, sending a small ceramic lamp smashing to the floor. I was sprinting for the apartment door, the journal clutched to my chest. Just as my hand reached the handle, the orange desk lamp, still focused on the spot where the tools had been, caught a reflection from the open inner cover of the journal I held. And the final, shocking piece of the puzzle slammed into place. It wasn't a family diary about their parents. The spine was labeled Property of Ari Hawthorne. Professor Hawthorne was the current resident of this apartment, and etched meticulously into the leather of the inner cover, beneath where Sarah had been scraping, was a series of complex mathematical equations. This wasn't a family secret, it was high-level research. And what I realized in that split second, just as Liam's hand wrapped around my shoulder, was that Sarah hadn't been peeling off glue to hide the name. She had been trying to peel off something sticky, a piece of evidence, that proved she was the one who had broken into Professor Hawthorne's apartment first. Liam's hand tightened on my shoulder, spinning me around. He wasn't trying to hurt me, not yet, but his grip was iron. He looked utterly confused and heartbroken, his eyes darting between me and Sarah, who was slowly pushing herself up from the shattered ceramics. "Give me the book," he whispered, his voice trembling now. "It's Dad's. It's the only way to finish his work." That was the key. He wasn't hiding from someone. He was hiding to finish something. Sarah had told me their father had been an engineering professor. Liam hadn't just run away. He was in a fugue state, convinced he had to complete a legacy project. And he had taken the wrong book. Professor Hawthorne's advanced research on quantum mechanics, which Sarah, a brilliant student herself, knew was far too valuable and sensitive to be exposed. She hadn't broken in. She had tracked Liam to the apartment, realized the massive mistake he'd made, and was trying to meticulously remove any trace that he'd taken the faculty member's property. The smudge on her sweater wasn't blood, it was glue residue. "Liam, stop," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady as she finally got to her feet. "It's not his, honey. That's Professor Hawthorne's. Your dad's notes are safe. We'll finish them together, okay? But not this one. This isn't worth losing everything else over." The gentle tone, the sisterly authority, seemed to pierce the fog in his mind. The tension bled out of his posture, and he suddenly looked exhausted and very, very young. He released me, his head dropping into his hands. "I just wanted to make him proud," he mumbled, sinking onto the floor. I placed the journal gently on the desk, stepping back to give them space. The climax wasn't a fight, it was an intervention. Sarah rushed over, kneeling beside him, holding him tightly while he finally broke down, the immense grief from 2 years ago washing over him again, amplified by the stress of college and the mistaken purpose he'd pursued. I realized then that the whole terrifying night had nothing to do with me, or a dark secret, but with the impossible burden Sarah carried trying to keep her brother afloat after a tragedy. We didn't call the police. We didn't call campus security. Sarah quietly gathered the tools, secured the journal back in the drawer, and helped a drained, stumbling Liam downstairs. I walked beside them, a silent witness, a temporary anchor. We eased Liam back into his bed, and he was asleep instantly, finally safe. Sarah stood in our tiny, dark room. "Thank you," she said, her voice raw. "You saved us both." "What happens now?" I asked. She sighed, touching the frame of Liam's bed. "I write the next chapter. I'll talk to Hawthorne tomorrow. I'll explain. He's an old friend of Dad's. He'll understand the grief, if not the breaking and entering." She gave me a weak smile. "I just hope this secret stays between the three of us." I knew it would. I looked at my friend, sleeping peacefully, and realized that sometimes the biggest drama in life isn't about conspiracies or crimes, but about the fragile threads of family, love, and the lengths people go to protect the ones they can't afford to lose. We all have our secrets, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do is help someone else keep theirs, because the secret isn't the betrayal, it's the armor. Sarah gently opened our door to leave, pausing one last time. She didn't have to say anything. The look in her eye was a promise. She was going to fix this. But as she slipped out into the darkness of the hall, I couldn't help but wonder one final thing. If the journal was Hawthorne's, and Sarah knew her father's notes were safe, why had she been so frantically scraping something off the inside cover of the borrowed book?